This is Duties of Parents by J.C. Ryle, and we are now up to duty number 13. Train them, remembering continually how God trains his children. The Bible tells us that God has an elect people, a family in this world. All poor sinners who have been convinced of sin and fled to Jesus for peace make up that family. All of us who really believe on Christ for salvation are its members. Now God the Father is ever training the members of this family for their everlasting abode with him in heaven. He acts as a husbandman, pruning his vines that they may bear more fruit. He knows the character of each of us, our besetting sins, our weaknesses, our peculiar infirmities, our special wants. He knows our works and where we dwell, who our companions are in life, and what are our trials, what are our temptations, what are our privileges. He knows all these things and is ever ordering all for our good. He allots to each of us in his providence the very things we need in order to bear the most fruit, as much of sunshine as we can stand, and as much of rain, as much of bitter things as we can bear, and as much of sweet. Reader, if you would train your children wisely, mark well how God the Father trains his. He does all things well. The plan which he adopts must be right. See then how many things there are which God withholds from his children. Few could be found, I suspect, who have not had desires which he has never been pleased to fulfill. There has often been some one thing they wanted to attain, and yet there has always been some barrier to prevent attainment. It has been just as if God was placing it above our reach and saying, "This is not good for you. This must not be." Moses desired exceedingly to cross over Jordan and see the godly land of promise, but you will remember his desire was never granted. See, too, how often God leads his people by ways which seem dark and mysterious to our eyes. We cannot see the meaning of all his dealings with us. We cannot see the reasonableness of the path in which our feet are treading. Sometimes so many trials have assailed us, so many difficulties encompassed us, that we have not been able to discover the needs be of it all. It has been just as if our Father was taking us by the hand into a dark place and saying, "Ask no questions, but follow me." There was a direct road from Egypt to Canaan, yet Israel was not led into it, but round through the wilderness. And this seemed hard at the time. The soul of the people, we are told, was much discouraged because of the way. See also how God often chastens his people with trial and affliction. He sends them crosses and disappointments. He lays them low with sickness. He strips them of their property and friends. He changes them from one position to another. He visits them with things most hard to flesh and blood. And some of us have almost fainted under the burdens he laid upon us. We have felt pressed beyond strength, and have been almost ready to murmur at the hand which chastened us. Paul the Apostle had a thorn in the flesh appointed him, some bitter bodily trial, no doubt, though we know not exactly what it was. But this we know, he besought the Lord 3 times that it might be removed, yet it was not taken away. Now, reader, notwithstanding all these things, did you ever hear of a single child of God who thought his father did not treat him wisely? No, I am sure you never did. God's children would always tell you in the long run it was a blessed thing they did not have their own way, and that God had done far better for them than they could have done for themselves. Yes, and they could tell you too that God's dealings had provided more happiness for them than they would have ever obtained themselves, and that his way, however dark at times, was the way of pleasantness and the path of peace. I ask you to lay to heart the lesson which God's dealings with his people is meant to teach you. Fear not to withhold from your child anything you think will do him harm, whatever his own wishes may be. This is God's plan. Hesitate not to lay on him commands of which he may not at present see the wisdom, and to guide him in ways which may not now seem reasonable to his mind. This is God's plan. Shrink not from chastising and correcting him whenever you see his soul's health requires it, however painful it may be to your feelings. And remember, medicines for the mind must not be rejected because they are bitter. This is God's plan. And be not afraid, above all, that such a plan of training will make your child unhappy. I warn you against this delusion. Depend on it. There is no surer road to unhappiness than always having our own way. To have our wills checked and denied is a blessed thing for us. It makes us value enjoyments when they come. To be indulged perpetually is the way to be made selfish, and selfish people and spoiled children, believe me, are seldom happy. Reader, do not be wiser than God. Train your children as He trains His. So now we move on to duties of parents, number 14. Train them remembering continually the influence of your own example. Instruction and advice and commands will profit little unless they are backed up by a pattern of your own life. Your children will never believe you are in earnest and really wish them to obey you, so long as your actions contradict your counsel. Archbishop Tillotson made a wise remark when he said, "To give children good instruction and a bad example is but beckoning to them with the head to show them the way to heaven, while we take them by the hand and lead them in the way to hell." We little know the force and power of example. No one of us can live to himself in this world. We are always influencing those around us in one way or another, either for good or for evil, either for God or for sin. They see our ways, they mark our conduct, they observe our behavior, and what they see as practice, that they may fairly suppose we think right. And never, I believe, does example tell so powerfully as it does in the case of parents and children. Fathers and mothers, do not forget that children learn more by the eye than they do by the ear. No school will make such deep marks on character as home. The best of schoolmasters will not imprint on their minds as much as they will pick up at your fireside. Imitation is a far stronger principle with children than memory. What they see has a much stronger effect on their minds than what they are told. Take care, then, what you do before a child. It is a true proverb, "Who sins before a child sins double." Strive rather to be a living epistle of Christ, such as your families can read, and that plainly, too. Be an example of reverence for the Word of God, reverence in prayer, reverence for means of grace, reverence for the Lord's Day. Be an example in words, in temper, in diligence, in temperance, in faith, in charity, in kindness, in humility. Think not your children will practice what they do not see you do. You are their model picture, and they will copy what you are. Your reasoning and your lecturing, your wise commands and your good advice, all this they may not understand, but they can understand your life. Children are very quick observers, very quick in seeing through some kinds of hypocrisy, very quick in finding out what you really think and feel, very quick in adopting all your ways and opinions. You will often find as the Father is, so is the Son. Remember the word that the conqueror Caesar always used to his soldiers in a battle. He did not say, "Go forward," but "Come." So it must be with you in training your children. They will seldom learn habits which they see you despise, or walk in paths in which you do not walk yourself. He that preaches to his children what he does not practice is working a work that never goes forward. It is like the fabled web of Penelope of old, who wove all day and unwove all night. Even so, the parent who tries to train without setting a good example is building with one hand and pulling down with the other.